I'd like to call to order the Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop Meeting Number 5. Today is Wednesday, July the 23rd, 2025, and it is 4 p.m. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Brooks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini,
Here.
Commissioner McGeehan,
Here.
Commissioner Gabayi,
Here.
all are present.
With no public in attendance, we will move right into discussion items. Budget Workshop Number 5, July 2025 presentation. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission, and appreciate again your attendance for Budget Workshop Number 5. We will begin. I'll turn it over here briefly to our Finance Director, Andrew Laughlin. But again, as we've gone throughout the latter part of spring and throughout the summer, we have one more workshop in August, followed by the 2 public hearings on September the 10th and September the 24th. So as we approach the end, I do want to thank all of you for your input, for your listening, obviously, and for providing just questions, comments, and any additional input for the budget. So thank you to all of you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Laughlin. Back.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin, and welcome everybody. For the agenda today, I want to go through some historical to current year-to-date to see kind of where we're at. Similarly to what I've presented to you all in past presentations, especially for revenues and those certain revenue accounts that could have been affected by the hurricanes. We've done some analysis. Where were we on year-to-date through January, year-to-date through March, and now we're going to go year-to-date through June on various revenue accounts. We'll look at where we are year-to-date on expenditures by department, and then we'll also go through the current status of where we are on the damage assessment and progress made on renovations and repairs by facilities, facilities, buildings, infrastructure, equipment, and vehicles. Then before I jump right into the FY26 budget, I've already provided these materials to you. There's been some minor changes to the budget since our last workshop. I have that summarized in a page so just so you know what's changed. I don't plan on going through page by page, kind of like what we did last time, but we'll just kind of address specific targeted questions you all have. Before I do that, I did want to provide you all some ad valorem tax analysis. Apologize, I thought I included that in the presentation. I saw that I didn't, so I have that both in paper, and Robin will display it on the screen. So we'll probably do that before we get into the 26 budget, and I'll pass those deliverables out to you and go through it. Apologies since you didn't get to review it before this meeting, so I'll go through it in meticulous detail so you understand everything on the ad valorem analysis at various millage rates, what your typical property tax bill would look to be, homesteaded, non-homesteaded. So I have that data here for you all, and I can provide, after this, the actual Excel document that provides all this, if you'd like to see that electronically. So that's my plan for today, and we'll have some fun. So starting with just some where we're year to date, starting on item 4A on page 5, just ad valorem taxes, October through June. So pleasantly surprised that our property tax refund hit has not been as significant as initially feared. Our October through June collections, as you can see, have been improving from 23 to 24 to 25. Our property tax valuation for our assessed valuation, remember that occurred on January 1, 2024 for a tax levy in October of 2024 based on those assessed valuations on January 1st, 24 before the 2 hurricanes hit. Now the hurricanes hit, and again, we'll get into the ad valorem analysis to show you the reduction in value in assessed value of properties. But for current fiscal year 2025, the only potential revenue loss as it relates to ad valorem taxes, what are those potential property tax refunds under submitting a Form DR 465, and there just hasn't been as many and as significant as initially feared. So that total has been in like the tens of thousands. I think we're maybe up to maybe $50,000 off a, total property tax revenues of close to $6 million. So not as bad as first feared. Next, on the non-exchange revenues, so we've got other taxes, franchise fees, state shared revenues. So that first one on the taxes was through June. I went back a month to May since those are collected in arrears, so I wanted to make sure I have full information through May, through the date that we prepared this presentation, so that I knew I had all months accounted for, October through May, for multiple fiscal years, 23, 24, and 25. And you can see what's been affected the most in fiscal year 25 are those franchise fees and utility service taxes, which we've explained before makes sense. You're not in your home, you're not paying your electricity bill. That impacts our franchise fee revenue, your propane bill, and then also those utility service taxes on top of that. But otherwise, communication service tax is a little dip. State shared revenues, largely the same. Local option use fuel taxes, not much difference there. Then you get in on the next page on 7, building and planning revenues, October through June collections. Again, not to belabor this, but you obviously see the declines largely in those permit fees. 800,000 last year. Now we're just a little over 200,000 year to date. Impact fees have been somewhat steady, and then our business tax receipts also somewhat steady, but that's not been a major source of revenue for the city. And then on page 8, for these contractual services, sanitation, stormwater charges, recreation, marina fees, and then our contractual services, which that has remained unchanged. A little impact, obviously, on the recreation, marina fees has taken the biggest hit, but impressed to see sanitation and stormwater charges. Those have not taken any major revenue declines. A little down from prior year, but not too significant. And then parking, we're starting to creep up on parking. So from 23 to 24, actually 23 was a little higher than 24, but not much difference there. And we're not too terribly far behind. It's impressive to see, given that we had virtually no parking operation, for a number of months after the storms hit. And then we're even starting to creep up our parking fines as well, as those are starting to creep up to get to prior year levels. And then that's depicted graphically, and then now just starting on page 10, just what those numbers look like by revenue type from October to June 23, October to June 24, October to June 25. So you can see what those specific figures look like. So all in all, not that bad. Again, we still went through the application process to get for the lost revenue through the Emergency Bridge Loan Program. I did have a meeting with the representative just last week. He asked some clarifying questions on the calculations that I presented to you all in the last workshop. So we've largely worked through that. Now that's kind of going through their final review and approval process. So I hope to hear something back soon on that. I believe our amount was a little over $3 million in proposed revenue loss susceptible to the emergency bridge loan that is interest-free. So there's page 11, just on those specific tax and other fee revenue that we compared through May. And then just looking at our budget versus actual analysis for expenses now. So on some departments, we are grossly under budget. Looks like you all aren't spending enough money in the Board of Commissioners. So if you need to take some lavish trips, now's the time. You got plenty of budget available. Just kidding, just kidding.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On the non-departmental revised budget to $17.5 million, that is taking all of the hurricane into account? Is that's why that number?
For which one?
Non-departmental. The original budget was $2,500,000. The new budget is $17,570,000.
That's
So
right. So
that-
we executed a budget amendment, if you will recall, that was
yep.
the big one. It's an account called disaster-related expenses, 01.1400. 1400 is non-departmental because it didn't relate to any other department specifically. And then whatever disaster expense code 552 something or 55, I'm not sure. But yeah, that was the big amount there. Yep, and that's where we're coding most of those disaster-related expenses. The other big one is the fire EMS. As you can see, that major jump there, which, if I recall correctly, that was the build-out of the Reddington Station. Yep, exactly. And then some increases in sanitation as well, and Archibald, also hurricane-related, buying some additional maintenance and departmental supplies expenses that weren't initially accounted for that resulted from the hurricane. So all in all, we're feeling pretty good about where we stand from a budget actual standpoint. We might have one more amendment come to you around the end of the year. For example, the Marina Department has had to purchase, I think it's 39 or so power pedestals that sustained storm damage. That purchase, I think, is at least $60-something thousand, unbudgeted, right? So as that's coming through, as we're watching the Marina budget, that the Marina Department may not be able to.
And that,
Listing that in its
just
budget.
for informational purposes, that will not be covered under insurance. Those pedestals, will they, Krabby?
Is it on? Yeah. The ones that are attached to land will be, we're still talking with the insurance company about the ones over the water, like that were on the dock. So anything that was attached to land is 100% covered. We're still discussing with the adjuster about the ones over the water and other property over the water.
Do you know if insurance doesn't cover it, if FEMA will? Do you know? If you don't know that, that's okay. If no one knows that, I'm just
Yeah, we
curious.
don't- I think it's been submitted as with all of our damage, but we won't know until we hear back from FEMA.
Thank you.
So then a little more specifics on the hurricane-related expenses. Moving on to page 13. Helene and Milton, obviously far and away the greatest expenses in Helene. And that's, and most of those, as you can see in the following pages on the top spend by vendor, is the debris hauling. And so those are your top two, and combined with Keystone Excavators. So we've got the Helene expenses incurred largest vendors. You can see where the largest ones are, and then, but you can see what all of them, the amounts paid to vendor and the description of each type, just so you're aware of what we're spending those monies on and purpose. So that's for Helene on page 14, and then on page 15, that moving forward with Milton. And before with Milton, the largest were maybe some food-related expenses to the community, but now we've got with ServPro some remediation work from the damage from Milton on the rec center, construction repair work, and the remediation work on the $75,000 for the remediation, $57,700 thus far on the construction-related and repair expenses. So that was on 15. Then the last thing as it relates to the hurricane, just starting on page 16, is just the damage assessment. So we've been continually providing these, and here's just another latest update of where we stand on damages and the current status of the repair replacement. So on page 17, that starts with land and infrastructure, mostly in the public works arena. So I'll keep moving through there, but please stop if you have any questions on any of these, and on public works, Megan Webfer's happy to address. That's 17, 18, 19, and 20. Then on page 21 are the facilities. So no real insurance proceeds on infrastructure-related items, but we're subject to insurance reimbursement on buildings, facilities, equipment, vehicles. So we show some additional information around insurance proceeds received on some of these other items, starting with facilities on page 21. And then vehicles on page 22.
Now, on the damage assessment to facilities, we're going to discuss that in the next workshop, aren't we, Robin, under hurricane update repairs?
You can discuss them now since we're going through them now if you have questions.
I wanted an update on where we were at on all the projects is what I had asked in the last meeting. So that's what this is going to be discussed in the workshop, not in the budget workshop.
We can't.
I'm
Sure.
asking just to make sure it gets discussed. I don't think the money part of it is what I'm concerned in. I'm concerned in knowing where we are in the process of repairs.
Sounds good. So yeah, so if there's financial related questions, magnitude of cost, we can cover it here, and then any specifics on progress, we can hit that in the workshop. Okay. So that's 21, page 22, and then page 23, more equipment, and a little more information on page 24. And also, so this is insurance proceeds. Plus, it did show a little, we did get a FEMA reimbursement for some roadway repairs, $23,382. Just more recently in June. And also note, we also received that large funding up front, $6 million or so, I can't remember the exact number, pre-funding the Cat A expenses on the debris removal. But more recent reimbursement from FEMA was for about $23,000. Any questions on what I've covered thus far on kind of where we're at year-to-date, revenues, expenses, hurricane-related costs? If none,
On 23,
go ahead.
if there is no insurance proceed received on any of the line items, you don't expect to receive any. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about expectation. I think we're working with our insurance carrier and providing them all this information. And then that last column is just showing what has been received. And so then if it somehow is not insurable, then we would, if we're not going to get it from the insurance company, we would fight and submit it for potential FEMA reimbursement. So I'm not sure exactly where we stand on requests and where that is in the process. The last column is just showing what those true proceeds are. But if it's insurable, then we're certainly trying to obtain insurance money for it. Okay, so then before I jump into page 25, I did want to provide a little handout on and maybe walk through the ad valorem tax revenue piece. Again, sincere apologies, not included in the workshop presentation, but I have it in hard copy. And Robin, if you could maybe pull that up as well as on the screen, and I will pass this out now. Okay. So the first one is just showing, hey, at our current rate, what will we generate in ad valorem tax revenue? And then we also have what's called the rolled back rate, with the majority vote maximum rate allowed, and then the two-thirds vote maximum rate allowed. So the property appraiser computes this, puts that in the DR 420 series. So this is the DR 420. There's also a DR 422. They submitted that by beginning of July. So I had that information on what those different rates are. And I put that into this worksheet to just show you, hey, what if we went to the rollback rate? What would that look like in terms of tax revenue compared to maintaining the current rate? Or if we wanted to go to the 2/3 vote maximum rate allowed, what would that number be? And what would those increased taxes be? So just starting here at the top of the worksheet, our current tax rate is 2.75 mils. You can see at the bottom, we show historical. So it's been that same rate since fiscal year, I believe, 2019, where we did make a rate increase when we issued that stormwater debt and increased the millage rate in order to help absorb those annual debt service payments resulting from that private placement bank debt issuance. But our rate has been consistent at 2.75 mils. You can see historically at the bottom what our tax collections have been. You can see they've been increasing year over year because property values have been increasing year over year. Well, this is the first year and probably a long time that property values are now projected to decrease. So you can see here on the first line, by keeping the same millage rate of 2.75 mils, our taxable value estimate is about $2.1 billion. We'll earn projected tax revenue of $5,463,000, and this would be a decrease of about $316,000. So we will be earning less in ad valorem tax revenue from what were the current 2025 fiscal year. Ultimately, staff's recommendation is to just maintain the current millage rate of 2.75. I think this is a blip in the radar, as we've explained in the last workshop. Property values will go up. This is structural values that have been impacted, but that's what it's currently going on in the marketplace. We're seeing either homes turning over, selling, so you can see some valuation increases just by potentially a home that's been homesteaded, now non-homesteaded, getting sold to an investor, as well as then a valuation resulting from a damaged structure, then a full rebuild. Okay, now that home's value, when that rebuild occurs, will be, back up and higher. So again, it's just the result of the hurricanes that have caused this, but it's not not a long-term sustaining issue we have. So so that's why we're comfortable. The city staff's comfortable maintaining the current tax rate where it's at. If we were to adopt the rollback rate, it would increase taxes from 2.75 to 2.8581, and that would lessen the blow, only about $100,000 impact instead of a $316,000 impact. If we wanted to try to raise the millage rate so we can improve our revenue from prior year, that would be looking at close to 3 mils, 2.987, that we would need a majority vote for. And if we wanted, the maximum we could increase it to for a 2/3 majority vote would be 3.2857. Again, discussions we don't need to have if we're all comfortable setting the millage rate at 2.75, but that is one of the purposes of this workshop is, as I mentioned last time, by July 29th, I need to go into the Oasis eTrim portal and submit our initial proposed millage rate and our date and time of our first public hearing. So I want to make sure we have consensus from everybody, and we can tackle this at the very end when we go through everything, and then just maybe have a little discussion, make sure everyone's comfortable with staff's recommendation of 2.75, or if there's any thoughts to the contrary, let's have that deliberation so that I can know what the hopefully unified feeling is for me to enter that into the eTrim portal. Because what's the implication? That rate is what's going to be on all the trim notices that go out to all the property owners. The middle section is just take a homeowner A, B, and C. So let's say I have a property that had a taxable value of $525,000, homeowner B less, only $135,000, homeowner C of 820,000. And then if there was a 3% increase in my home's value, I use 3% because if they're all homesteaded, it's the 3% annual cap. Obviously, that's not the case for all properties. Some, obviously, a good number that sustained damage, maybe had a decrease in the valuation. But in general, if your home increased 3%, what would your tax increase look like? So if we kept that millage rate at 2.75 and your home did increase in value by 3%, that last column will show you what you're paying more in taxes this next year for fiscal year 25-26 than you paid currently. So $43 impact, $11 impact, $68 impact. So keeping the rates the same, not, we'll see a number of homes that'll have lesser taxes if their valuation is decreased, of course. But just wanted to give you perspective on that from an average homeowner and for a property that just continues to appreciate by roughly 3% each year, what that change in that tax burden would look like. The next page, if you want to, oh, sorry. Questions?
That's a good idea. I have a question. So at the very top, current rate at 2.75, you show a decrease from fiscal year 2025 of $316,938.
Mm-hmm.
You show a fiscal year 25-26 projected ad valorem of 5.463. However, when you jump down on the bottom line, that's at 5.606.
Right.
So what's the difference between those? I don't understand those two numbers. Fiscal year 2025 at 5.6 million, shouldn't that be with your comparison, which is at 142,000? Shouldn't you be comparing that 5.463 to the 5.606?
Great question. We're not done collecting, so we're still getting tax collection proceeds from the Pinellas County tax collector. In total, we expect, based on our assessed valuation of $2,212,693,010, that's current fiscal year 24-25, we project we'll have revenues by the end of the year, by the end of September. We're only in July now, so by the end of September, we're projecting we'll have about $5,780,660. So that's the number I used to show the decrease.
And that number's not on here.
Correct. If you look at that bottom right, you see a little star there, FY25 with a star.
Okay.
That says balances obtained through July 16, 2025. I'm projecting that out to say that balance by 9/30, by the end of September 2025, will probably be, instead of 5,606,000, will probably be around 5,780,000. So we got a little more collections to go.
Okay. Bear with me a second. So that's what, okay. So that's where that's coming from. In the center section there, column 3 and column 5 have the exact same title. What am I missing? They're
Column, which
That's
section
the
you looking at?
increase in the actual taxes paid with a estimated 3% value increase.
so that's a
So that's assuming this year, your home was worth $525,000.
all right. So that's a
For last tax
calculation
year.
based on the 3% increase.
And then, yeah,
That's-
we're just assuming it increased by 3%. So this next year, your taxable value in your home will be $540,000 instead of $525,000. And
Okay.
if that same
but
millage rate, what would your increase in taxes be?
wasn't the assumption that the overall taxable value is going to drop in '26, even though it'll be basically 1 year?
It is overall. Every property is going to be a little different, right? Some may not have sustained much damage and they're homesteaded and their value from when they bought it back from 1996 has increased, but they're subject to that 3% cap. So I think there are a number of residents in Madeira Beach whose home values will potentially increase by 3%, but then there'll be a good amount that did sustain more damage, and they'll have a lower valuation.
Right.
This was just purely illustrative purposes for the average homeowner.
Yeah,
that
no, we
had a
have to,
little bit of
we have to
increase.
base it on something, but I'm just in my mind's eye, the following year, 2027, is going to be substantially higher than this past year, or this year, current year, 2025. But that interim year of 26, I don't know that we're going to, I would expect it to be flat or even lower, given that many of the homes are going to be basically assessed on the dirt value, not, there's so many homes that are being demolished right now. They're not going to have their U&O until after the new assessment period.
Right.
I mean, I'm personally, I think we'd be foolish to consider anything but the current millage rate. So we're staff have the same mindset, but I'm just, I guess, challenging some of the assumptions. That's all.
We'll keep them, as I think as Andrew stated, there are a considerable number, especially homes that are homesteaded still, or properties that are homesteaded. The valuation that the property appraiser assigns year after year has increased significantly over the last just even 5 years. So there are, if you bought your home 5 years ago and paid $100,000, the property appraiser appraised it at, say, $85,000, that appraisal could have increased
So
the
you're-
just market
Right.
significantly more than 3%, but
You're saying we're going to be, the city is going to be purging so many homestead accounts that will probably, even in 26, increase the overall taxable value. But doesn't that go in contrary to the rollback rate being higher than the 2.75? If the taxable value increases overall, wouldn't it be a lower millage rate?
Right, then the taxable value has
For the rollback
decreased.
rate?
but it's decreased.
Typically, typically, the rollback rate is less than the current rate, and that's been the
Right.
case for the last 15
But
plus
that's
years.
based on taxable value increasing.
Correct.
So if this number increases, this one has to decrease to get the same dollar value being received by the city.
Correct.
But in this comparison, the millage rate is increasing from the 2.75, which means the taxable value would be dropping, yet we're estimating a 3% increase. Something's not triggering in my mind
No, I
here.
think as Andrew stated, it's just for illustration to show you that if your taxable value did increase, because it is increasing for some, but decreasing for quite a few. And remember that your taxable value can increase if you're well below your just market value. Again, if the property appraiser assesses your home at $600,000, but you've been homesteaded for a decade, your property tax is still going to increase. If you've been capped at, say, $300,000, it's still going to go up.
Right, no, I understand all that, but I'm just saying, okay, the question is, do you anticipate the taxable value for the city as a whole to increase or decrease in 2026?
Next year, so this
Yeah.
time next year,
The next, yeah, the
For
next,
fiscal '27.
the next,
for
the
fiscal
next
year
assessment,
27 budget,
the next assessment, what we're talking about here, the next time that they apply this to the taxable value, next time, I don't know, what do they do that in December?
January.
November? January? Yeah,
January 1st.
right, okay.
So by January 1st, 2026, Don't hold me to it, but I anticipate that the valuation for the city of Madera Beach will be higher than what it is in January 25.
Okay, and that's.
Now,
what
that
we-
could
that's
certainly
what- that's-
change it.
you know, using that assumption,
Yeah.
that's typically what we see every year. And using that assumption, every year we start looking at a rollback rate, which is lower than the 2.75, the current rate.
Correct.
So we're using the same assumption that the taxable value is going to increase, but yet we're looking at increasing, the options here are increasing our millage rate versus decreasing it, which is what we see every year. Is that right? As a rollback rate.
This is the one, yeah, the rare year that
This is right.
that the rollback rate is
Higher.
lower. And
Are you following what I'm saying? Is it, am I off base here?
The rollback rate is
It's higher this year.
higher because the taxable values are lower.
But we just said we don't, we expect that the taxable values to be
No,
higher.
but this is looking at next fiscal year, fiscal '26.
Right, which is what, isn't that what they're going to be assessing?
No, that's what was
assessing it in
just assessed,
January?
that was just assessed in
Already
January
assessed.
of '25. 6 months ago, the assessments began for this number that's on the screen.
your property gets assessed January 2025,
Right,
and you're going to pay those taxes hopefully before November 30 of 2025.
And
On
that's,
that assessment that took place
Right.
9.5, 10, 11 months ago. And that's the revenue that the city earns that's in our fiscal year '26 budget. So it's a 1/1/25 assessment, a 10/1/2025 levy. You pay it in November.
so you're
it's-
saying right now the taxable value is lower?
yes.
Yes.
For currently, but for next year's budget. It's a little
Okay.
complex sometimes to.
And you're City of Madera Beach is one of the few communities where the taxable value
Decrease.
has decreased. If I tell you Bel Air, higher, Bel Air Beach, a little lower, Bel Air Bluffs, a little lower, or excuse me, higher, Bel Air Shore, higher, Clearwater, higher, Dunedin, higher, Madeira Beach, lower, St. Pete Beach, lower, Reddington Beach, lower. You see the trend, if the word beach is in the name, that's where you're seeing the decrease, right? Dunedin, higher, Gulfport, higher, Indian Rocks Beach. Commissioner Kerr, what do you think?
Has to be lower.
Lower, lower. Indian Shores, higher. Kennis City, higher. Largo, higher, right?
All
You
right,
have
but
beach in your name,
But
you've been hit.
regardless, we're setting the
Which-
value for the upcoming,
Which clearly is not indicative of the entire market. It's indicative that we got hit, the Barrier Islands got hit by hurricanes the worst, right? And that impacts structural values. Provided no more calamities, I think that's gonna flush itself out. We'll see our 1/1/26
so if the values,
valuation
if
be
the
much
if the
higher.
overall values increase next year, it doesn't matter because we've set the rate. And that's what you're trying to get to. Should we set the rate higher to get the same money?
If we want to set the
But-
rate higher to get the same money, then yeah, we've got to go to the,
But we're talking $400,000 difference, no,
$306
$500,000 difference between what we expect to receive by the end of this fiscal year from what it was the last fiscal year. So if we keep the current 2.75, we would still expect to receive more actual revenue than we did in 2024.
2 years ago, 2024.
Yeah, well, last year.
Well, last year is really this year, 2025. Keeping this, the millage.
5.25 is what we got last year, 2024.
Oh, yes, 2024, yes. Last year, we
Compared,
got
compared to 5.7.
we got 5.24 million. In 2026, we're going to get 5.463 million.
Right.
Absolutely, yes.
And you're expecting, you're anticipating a $300,000 hit by leaving it at the
At
current rate.
2.75, yep.
So, but we would still be receiving $200,000 more than we did
In '24,
in '24.
yes,
Okay,
yep.
I rest my case.
And then we should potentially have a much bigger increase in '27 compared to '26.
I believe that to be true.
Because property values will recover.
If you look up on the screens are the taxable value increases and decreases for the cities, towns out here on the barrier island, to what Andrew was saying a few moments ago. And Indian Shores increase mainly condos, along with more condos than not, so not as significant damages, but the others, few of the Reddingtons and Treasure Island, St. Pete Beach, again, decreases in taxable values.
Northern
Well,
northern cities didn't get hit as hard.
Right, I think Bel Air Shore is mostly residential, already multi-level residential. And Bel Air Shore is very small,
Is that
probably
Clearwater or Clearwater Beach?
It's Clearwater, it's one city, Clearwater, so it's taking into account the entire city of
City.
Clearwater, which the majority is the mainland, not out on the beach.
Right.
That's why they show a 4.7.
And Bel Air Shores is all condos. Many condos.
Many condos in Indian Shores.
No, Bel Air Shores.
Oh, Bel Air Shores. Bel Air Shore is mostly elevated homes,
Yeah.
but very, very small.
Okay, thank you.
So the next page just goes in a bit of a deeper dive. And so instead of, don't even worry about reading the fine print, it just kind of explains your millage rate that you've paid your property taxes back in November-ish, let's say. Your total millage rate was 15.8131. It wasn't 2.75 because you had to pay a lot of other taxes. County General, School, Juvenile Welfare Board, PSTA, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority, et cetera, right? So that is your total millage rate assessed on your property. City of Madeira Beach is just one component. And so if we said, well, if you were to say, let's move to the rollback rate, what would that impact be? Which would be an increase in taxes, right? Typically, that's a decrease because property taxes rise, or property values rising. But in this case, a change to the rollback rate would increase from 15.8131 to 16.2493, assuming all other taxing authorities kept their millage rates the same, okay? Making that assumption. I don't know that currently. But making that assumption, that is your change in your millage rate if we were to adopt the rollback rate. And what would that impact be? So for homesteaded properties, your average, that's in the middle part in blue, your average single-family home, their property tax on average is $7,354. If we were to increase our millage rate to the rollback rate, they would pay $7,555 on average. So that would be about an on average $202 increase to them. So that's just giving you a little flavor of, okay, what would the impact be from adopting the rollback rate versus keeping the rate the same at 2.75. And that's a little higher for non-homesteaded than for homesteaded. Because there's a bigger difference for the homesteaded from the assessed value to the taxable value. Because get those additional exemptions, up to 25,000 school, 50,000 municipal. So the pink is the top and the non-homestead, then you get the homestead, and then I combined them both. So just purely informational. What's the average taxes the Madeira Beach homeowner will pay if in a homesteaded property or in a non-homesteaded property? In Madeira Beach, on average, that'd be $7,354 for a single-family home, homesteaded, $11,598 non-homesteaded if we kept the millage rate the same. Then you just take the next page. Any questions on that? So far, so good. And I can disseminate this Excel document so you can see the formulas as well, if that's helpful. I can email that to you all as well after this session. Then the next one, just take a $500,000 property, and let's just assume it's just been increasing by 3% in its assessed valuation every year. 3%. Obviously, that's not indicative of all homes, especially more recently, where some of will obviously have experienced a valuation decline. But just for simplicity's sake, one $500,000 property increasing in valuation 3%. What were the taxes that property paid going back from 2017 to 25? You can see from 2021 to 2022, there were some jurisdictions that did reduce their millage rate that contributed to that, even though that property's assessed valuation was increasing by 3%. And so the next page then gives you the actual numbers on that. You can see we started at 500,000 and kept increasing by 3% each year from 2017 to 2025. And then this is what their total tax levy is, not just for Madeira Beach, but total tax levy for all those taxing authorities and what the annual increases are. Just to give you a little bit of historical flavor of if you had around a $500,000 valued property back then and kept increasing, what's your tax burden each year? And then for that, how did I capture or how did I calculate that 2025 number of $9,370.68 for the levy? That's what I just showed you in this last page. These are all your different taxing authorities, their respective millage rates. There's the assessed value that we came up with, $633,385. It's homesteaded, so here's your exemption, $50,000 and $25,000. Here's your taxable value, and here's your taxes levied. And that's the computation. So of that total $9,370, $1,604 going to Madeira Beach. So just a little ad valorem tax education there for you. But ultimately, this budget, as we move now back to the fiscal year 26 budget, the budget assumes maintaining a millage rate of 2.75 for that around $5,463,000 in tax revenue. And that's what we're using to prepare a fiscal year 26 budget. So before I go back to page 25 of our workshop materials, anything else you want to talk about ad valorem tax revenue-wise, or that so far so good? Perfect. And Excel, what I sent you in printed form, coming to you in Excel momentarily. Okay, so then
Andrew, I have one quick question, Andrew.
Sure.
The Pinellas County Planning Council, where does that money go? It's not a lot of money, but how is that spent? I mean, they're collecting it, obviously, from us, every one of us, but do you know how that is spent? You may not know, but I'm just curious.
Well, I used to audit them. There's the Pinellas County Planning Council, there's the Pinellas County Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO. The MPO is largely funded by federal and state grant dollars, transportation-related grants. Planning Council, on the other hand, is funded by ad valorem revenues, but they're mostly like a transportation planning agency around, I think both Pinellas County and maybe even greater into Pasco, Hillsborough. What their mission statement and objectives, we can look online to see. It'll provide more information, but that they're just a planning organization, and they work in concert with the MPO.
Yeah, I mean, there are other departments in Pinellas County that do not collect tax from all the municipalities, but PPC, Pinellas Planning Council does. So anyhow, I was just curious. I'm not sure if you.
I can't speak to the potential duplication of effort among other county departments, but that's their purpose. I think they're under the same executive director leadership for both entities, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, if no other questions, then just back to page 25. Try to just capture all of the changes from last budget. So I just want to kind of go over this page a little bit instead of running through every single page in the actual budget document. The last workshop, my planned deliverable will be our nice, pretty budget book with city manager's message, executive summary, a nice complete deliverable that upon approval will also get posted on our website and available for public consumption. What you're seeing here is all the guts within it, the schedules and whatnot. But we'll be providing then by the August workshop, that's the plan at least, to give you the whole complete budget book. So here's just the listing. We just see, like for example, on the first item, let me note update, we'll have some pay rate updates. We're still going through that process. So that'll be one more. In fact, there'll be two plan changes from the budget document you're seeing, budget numbers you're seeing here compared to what you'll see in August. We're still going through all filled and vacant position pay rates vis-a-vis the pay rate study that we did with the Gehring Group and finalizing some figures around that. That's still a work in process. We're working on finalizing that. So we will have some very minor budgetary impacts on the personnel side, nothing significant compared to what you're seeing here, but those will be some minor changes from this version to the next.
Andrew, could I ask a question on that? When the Gehring Group came and presented the pay study, this is, I guess, really for Robin, there was some confusion on whether or not they were to write job descriptions. And when we met in our one-on-one, we discussed it was part of their contract. We paid an additional $10,000 for that. Are they going to provide that to us?
Yeah, I spoke with them. We're working on finalizing what that'll look like, and they can update the job descriptions for us.
So how are they, I guess part of me, I wonder, how are they going to update the job descriptions accurately if every employee in the city didn't do the survey? And they didn't come here and do one-on-ones with
And that was
department
a question
heads?
that I posed
Yeah.
for them, so
Okay.
that's what we're waiting to hear back, how
Okay,
that
good.
will exactly look like.
Okay, thank you.
The other change that's forthcoming is as a result of the expectation we'll receive the litigation proceeds from the settlement on the structural damages to the fire station and the rec center. We'll be incurring those expenses in fiscal year 26. So we've already had some discussions underway on that. We're in the process of adding that to the operating budgets of the recreation department and the fire department where those expenditures will be incurred. Note I mentioned operating, not capital, because we're not expanding or improving the building. We're just trying to get it back to its intended state with its original intended useful life of, I don't know, it was 40, 50 years. I'll have to check our fixed asset record. So those will be just repair and maintenance expenses, and that's where they'll be coded to. But those figures do need to be added, and they'll be all in a little over $1 million on both for fire and recreation, maybe about $1.5 million. But we're still trying to finalize those figures. That will get added to the fiscal year 26 budget for those two departments.
Can you create a sub-account for that under their operating for building?
So what we can do
repair
is,
or whatever, and then you start out with a positive balance and you draw it down. And if you exceed it, at least we know quickly how those repairs came out. Did we have to throw in an extra 20% or did we save 20%?
We know we're gonna have to throw in 100%.
100%, whatever it is, but at least we'll have an idea on that in the budget. We have like a sub-account, I would think.
From an accounting perspective, there's a number of ways we can handle that. That's why I like setting up project codes So we don't necessarily have to add more and more general ledger accounts and expand our chart of accounts. So all those accounts that you see department-wide,
Yeah, I just
if every time there was a project or initiative, that gets a little too expansive. So what we can do is just create a project code for that. So any of those expenses, we can track what they are, and we'll know actuals compared to what we budgeted at the beginning of the year for
I
that.
just don't want it to get washed into, I know there's going to be some discussions at some point about improving the fire station, like that.
And those will be separate GL accounts. Those will be in capital. So those will hit it's called like our 563 accounts. Those are our capital improvement accounts. And that'll be budgeted separately in a separate general ledger string than the maintenance-related expenses we're going to be incurring to fix up those cosmetic issues.
Great, thank you. Well, they're not just cosmetic. Some
Well, cosmetic and structural, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
And so just running through the list, I don't necessarily want to go through each one. You know, some or through some internal deliberation that various department heads reevaluated and made some changes. Others emanated from potentially our June meeting, like the second from the top. So we had removed the capital project for the restroom facility, school athletic field. So we discussed that in the June workshop, and that was the decision to remove that. So that's no longer in our capital improvement plan and in the recreation department budget. So those are just the summary of changes. And if there's no questions on that, I might just leave you with my favorite page, number 28. I always go back to it. And of course, it's in the smallest print, so you got to have your bifocals ready. But again, this just shows, okay, what are our projected inflows? What are our projected outflows? We have a difference. Are we a surplus? Are we a deficit? Are there any particular deficits that are most concerning? And so, yeah, if it's fund balance, net position, carryover used, that means we're using that existing reserves to fund a projected deficit, budgetary deficit that we'll have in that fund. And you can see where we have, mostly in our proprietary activities, is where we have budgeted excess, namely in the parking fund, right? So about 2.7 million currently showing in the parking fund that can be used to fund future projects in other funds, where we can make fund-to-fund transfers from parking fund to other funds, maybe to fund if there's a massive project where requiring, you know, an issuance of debt, and then the parking fund can help fund the debt service payments, or fund certain project initiatives, maybe where we're not funded by debt. So the parking fund, the marina fund, you can see where we've had some good reserve buildup in those proprietary activities. The one big one where we always show a massive deficit is the stormwater fund. So projecting about a 6.5 million deficit. We have some very little unspent proceeds from that Series 2019 issuance, but those are dwindling. So what I propose over time, we want to keep an eye on our reserve balance, right? Right now we're well reserved. We've got healthy cash investment balances, probably citywide over $30 million. So I'm comfortable with self-funding certain project initiatives, stormwater projects, but definitely keep an eye on that. And so once our reserves, our cash investment balances start getting down to a level, what I want to come back to you all is with some financing options. But the reason I don't want to jump in and say we need to issue $20 million tomorrow on a bank deal or public bonds is just due to the kind of the unpredictable nature and timing of multiple different stormwater projects that are going to be happening over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years. So that's why an interim financing plan, like a commercial paper program or a line of credit, where we can draw when we need it, and then as we exhaust all of our our initiatives around stormwater or other things, then we can package that up and refinance that into a term bank loan, for example, and decide our time horizon over a 15-year, 20-year, 30-year for whatever annual debt service commitment, we're comfortable with as a city. So those are all discussions that, we can have. I just don't want to set fear and panic like, oh my God, we got a $6.5 million deficit in the stormwater fund. Where are we going to come up with this money? I just want to say we're well reserved now. We've got a good buildup of cash investments, but that's something that I will be and will be collectively monitoring. So when we start seeing those spending levels increase on the area 3s, the 5s, the 6, and the 3.5, and the 9, then yeah, we do need to start looking at potential borrowing. And that's why I like that flexibility of an interim financing plan with like the commercial paper program or the line of credit, where we can pull money as we need it and then move into a more fixed long-term financing arrangement when the time makes sense. So want to just give you some education. Those decisions will be forthcoming as we more aggressively spend that money. And we'll come back to you when the time comes to start thinking about that. Make sense?
So I have a couple questions. You're going to kind of stop there unless we have any questions, or are you going to keep going through the whole package?
I think unless you all, yeah, well, I'll stop for questions. And because I know we've gone through these department, I don't want to beat that up and again. So I kind of want to stop
I'm
and
going to
say,
beat it up a little.
what do you have questions on? And we'll just hit those head on.
So in our last budget workshop, we talked about I did, about the really not transparency of events and how the John's Pass Seafood Festival, it's over a $200,000 event, but you can't see it in our budget. And it's a big budget item. We spend $200,000, but you don't see that we spent it. You don't see what we're getting. And I did meet with Andrew, and there is a system within a Clarion to be able to track events, and they are going back and fixing it. And my understanding is staff will now move forward, and they will be doing it on the things coming forward. The reason I want that, and I'd like to explain it so that the people who didn't understand why I was asking it, is when you look at the budget, and you look at the general fund, or you look at non-departmental, there are things in non-departmental that recreation manages. And a lot of the seafood festival stuff falls into non-departmental. Facility rentals, when the recreation, because they are recreation and events, when they handle an event and they rent out a room, that is revenue that they have generated. And if you go over to just the recreation accounts, what you will find is that recreation has a revenue inflow of 500, or we'll do next year because I think this year's off, but next year they're budgeted for $566,950 for inflows. They're budgeted for over 2.5 million outflows. And I just feel like, and when you look through all of the things, promotions and publications that are expenses and outflows, they're budgeted for $250,000 next year. John's Pass Seafood Festival, I believe, is part of that. So I feel like when you look, they're not getting the credit they deserve, and they're not getting the critique that they deserve if the events aren't lean enough, right? You put on an event, you spend $200,000, you should make money. You should make money. If we're spending $200,000, and so Andrew, because I had sent him an email and asked him for an updated report on the Seafood Festival, and I'm not picking on the Seafood Festival, it's just that I started tracking the Seafood Festival last year based off of conversations, and so when I look at the last 4 years that we've managed it, we really haven't gotten better at it. And I think I want it to be better. I want us to make more money. I want us to do better. And it's the biggest thing, but I'd also like to see the grunt hunt. The marina puts on the grunt hunt. Are they getting credit for that? Revenue in, revenue out. It's a very great event. Lots of people go. It's a really good time. So I'm not asking for us to change the way we do our accounting. I'm just asking that we do our accounting with what's afforded to us. And it's there. And I think by our next budget meeting, we'll be able to see those numbers in real time. And again, my point is that a lot of things come into the general fund that aren't really general fund.
Well, so they're in the non-departmental, and then we will look at the non-departmental and put them in the appropriate department.
That is what I meant. I meant non-departmental, not general fund. I apologize. But yeah, so it's, I mean, I'm comparing them back and forth, and like I said, I don't know if there's a reason that we do it that way. And if that's the way it needs to be, it's fine. I want a report that shows events and what they cost and what we make. What are the donations? What is the revenue?
But in the budget, in other words, you want to put that in the budget document.
It makes it transparent. So one of my biggest things is transparency. And when I bring things up, it's about being transparent so that the public understands.
But in addition to being in the budget, I mean, throughout the year, that should be a standard report that you get 60 days after an event.
You should have it within much less time than that.
Well,
The-
I'm giving them plenty of time to
Yeah.
make sure it's correct.
Well, the fire department does an after-action report within days of an event they put on, which is a whole nother conversation. But correct, we should have it, it should be, there still is not a final report on the seafood festival.
But every event should have that.
Right.
I had just assumed,
They do not.
shouldn't assume.
That has to be set as a procedure, a policy and procedure, and I don't believe it is one. I could be incorrect on that, but I don't believe.
But it's two different, so one, we can break it out and put it into the budget by specific events, but we do have the revenues and the expenses for all the events, and we will bring them, and we have brought them here before, we just haven't done it for whatever reasons, but we have done that before, and we will continue to do that. But sounds like we will add it then to the budget to show all of those events and the expenses and the revenues.
Well, because, I mean, my point is, when you look at the way that the budget is now, because all of that stuff is in non-departmental, you don't reconcile. It looks like recreation is $2 million in the hole. That is not reality. And a layperson wouldn't understand to look over to non-departmental. It should be more clear because that's not non-departmental. It is part of recreation. That's my point. That's not really a clear,
No, agreed. I
Right.
mean, on page 56 and 57, compare the revenues and expenses for recreation.
right. It's not, and if you look back over the last several years, another reason why I think we need a lot more transparency on that is when you look back at the budget over several years of the revenue in, the revenue out, the numbers are very, very skewed. And sometimes that's because they've moved things around. Like maybe the city attorney was under one heading and now it's under something different. And with the Clarion, things are different. And I think I don't really remember how we did it before Clarion. But
Well, there's certain, capital is, you can cut $1 million out of it in comparison because capital's in the expense.
right,
So now you're down to 1.5, but you're still upside down by $1 million.
correct.
So the operating versus,
Well, and if you look at recreation, $250,000 of their $566,000 is impact fees. So that's why I think we need some real in numbers, out numbers. And just to say it out loud again, as I've said before, it is not that I believe recreation should make money. I don't even believe that recreation should break even. Recreation is for the betterment and for the enhancement of the community. But to have a full understanding of what we are spending on that and what it's costing us would be a valuable exercise, I believe.
Yeah, well, that would be a debate, whether it needs to break even or not. You have a 4,000 residents and you have 3 million visitors. How much is it benefiting the residents and how much is it benefiting the
Well, I mean, my
visitors?
point
It should be a
is,
moneymaker.
well, I mean, it's the happiest department in the city.
Should
It's
be.
recreation. I mean, I don't know. That's why I'd like to see it better. I know that, there was a time when we did a lot of events. We don't do as many as we used to. I know they're working on that, but the city does put on a lot of events that there is no charge to the community. Final Fridays, which are now, they're called Village Fridays. That is at an expense to the city. The music is sponsored. There are things that are sponsored, but it is at an expense to the city, and it is done for the community, for the residents, as well as the business owners. But we don't make any money off of that. There's no cost to go. It's free. It's to bring people in.
But again, we don't want to bog this down, but the question would be, should we make money on that? And how would that look and how would that compete with the business? And, we're not there. I don't know. That's a whole different debate.
Right, that's a
I'll
whole
just put
nother
it-
conversation. I
yeah.
would just like to have and my point in this, in sharing it with all of you, is that Andrew and I did talk about it today, and they are working on it, and I think that it'll be really good information for us to take some time to look at and discuss.
So we do have if you flip over to the Marina Fund on page 67, there is under revenues, again, page 67, about halfway down, line annual fishing tournament. And Krabby, is that the grunt hunt? Yeah. So we do have it as a line item in the marina as revenue. And so I think that's what you're looking for to show that. We do have conversely, I don't know if there's an expense for annual fishing tournament, but I see one for the boat parade. And I believe the boat parade,
The boat parade's separate, then the
Right.
grunt hunt comes out of our promotions and public relations, our expenses for the grunt hunt, as far as like the tent rental, prize money, things like that, comes out of our promotion and public relations budget.
so going forward, if I'm kind of the guidance would be to separately list boat parade event expenses.
So I wasn't going to bring this up, but since you did, to me, it looks like Marina does it right. So Marina captures all of their costs and all of their revenue. They're capturing it. What I'm telling you, what I was saying is recreation does not. Recreation, a lot of their stuff is captured over in the
Non-departmental.
non-departmental.
Right.
And specifically, when you're running a project that's $200,000, you should see what the cost is, what the,
Well, that's what I'm saying. In the
I mean, when
marina, then we would show fishing tournament expenses, because right now they're not showing in the marina. Krabby stated they are in promotions. They're not in non-departmental, so they're in the correct area. They're in the correct fund, but they're not specifically listed. And so I'm inferring that the direction would be to list them as a line item, what those expenses are.
Right. And if they're listed in promotions and public relations at 27,000.
Well, that's for multiple items.
That was my,
Yeah.
that was my
It's not
point.
just
You
the-
can't just say,
Right.
we're losing $7,000 on the grunt hunt. We're not. I wouldn't expect. But if we are, that's the whole point. All the events,
Yeah.
we spend so much on July 4th. We spend so much on
right.
Final Fridays. We spend so much on name your event.
We can
What-
certainly
what
list
does-
them.
What does that look like?
Correct.
And that's the point. And I thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, when you look at Marina, their projected fiscal year 2025 is $1,460,002 for what their revenues are. Their expenses are $1,020,449. I can look, those numbers make sense to me. The Marina was profitable.
Yeah, well, it's an enterprise fund, it should be.
Right.
And, okay. And then the same, okay. we got the
With recreation,
direction.
though,
We'll-
looking at the $2 million, that's a huge difference. And the numbers are there. Let's get them where they belong.
Gotcha, yep.
So takeaway for the next meeting, we'll definitely, we had some salary changes, the structural and cosmetic changes to the rec and to the fire station, and then we'll look at specific non-departmental revenues that are hitting Department 1400 non-departmental that should probably be hitting 5,000 recreation. Special event fees is the main one. I think that had about $175,000 budget. So moving that to the correct department that is responsible for and oversees that particular activity that generated that revenue. Anything else on the 26 budget? Otherwise, I want to make sure I've got we're all in concert as it relates to what we want to have as the millage rate. If all are in agreement with staff recommendation to keep it 2.75, we're required to take two public votes and two votes in two public meetings in September. We don't have to take a vote now. There's a workshop, so we can just talk about it. But if you all say, yeah, we're good, give me the thumbs up, or discuss otherwise, just want to have that general consensus. So I feel good about putting in the millage rate into our E-trim system.
Or you can add it to your special meeting that's coming up at 5:30 and take an official vote.
If you'd like to take a vote, yep.
That would be my recommendation, that you do that.
I'm okay with
Because your rules of procedure only talk about a consensus. And your rules of procedure also talk about it, the consensus is with the understanding that it is not binding. So it would be better for you to do it at your special meeting under new business, just add it as an agenda item and have your motion there. That's my suggestion.
I'm good with that.
Anything else you'd like to discuss as it relates to the 2026 budget or any presentation materials that I covered? Then
Any comments?
that does it for me then.
Do we have any public comment? Anything additional from the commission? Robin?
No,
Anything
thank
additional?
you. No, just again, thank you for the input. We'll look, again, as we discussed for the non-departmental and the other changes we will share with you leading up to the meeting, and then the next meeting will be on August 27th, excuse me, the next budget workshop, August the 27th at 4 p.m. And again, on the first public hearing and first reading of the budget will then be on September the 10th. And the second public hearing and second approval would be on Wednesday, September the 24th. All are welcome to attend.
With that, it is 5:18 and we are adjourned.